The sun, filtered through the smog of 300,000 restless Romans, was already too bright for my liking. It hammered off the bronze statue of the absent dictator, making the figure look less like a man and more like a cruel, grinning god. Absent. That was the core of my problem. I was the master of horse, Caesar's second, the man he left in charge of everything, while he was off playing kingmaker in the sands of Egypt. Master of the horse. The title sounds magnificent, like I controlled the very momentum of the Republic. In reality, it means that I am tethered to an empty chair in the Forum, holding the reins to an ungovernable city, waiting for a letter that never arrives. The letters, when they do come, are signed by Gaius Julius Caesar, dictator. Yet, despite the title, they lacked any real dictating. In fact, they contained little instruction and much assumption that the city hasn't already devoured itself. My own assumption that I could keep order simply by wearing purple and carrying Caesar's signet was proving catastrophically wrong. I pressed the back of my hand against my forehead, the movement jarring the fresh wine ache behind my eyes. The people are hungry. The veterans are angry over promised land grants, and the Senate sees weakness in my excesses, an opportunity in Caesar's extended absence. They whisper, they scheme, they talk of debt relief and land distribution policies I lack the authority to enforce, and the delicate touch to navigate. Yesterday, a riot broke out over the price of corn. I had to send in troops, Caesar's troops, to maintain a peace that was fracturing faster than sun-baked clay. I am not built for this intricate, gossamer dance of politics. I am a soldier, accustomed to the clarity of a battlefield, where the only currency is strength and blood, not scrolls and rhetoric. I picked up the latest dispatch from the docks. Still no word from Alexandria. Nothing but rising prices and a growing list of senators who suddenly feel bold enough to challenge my edicts. I am the master of horse, yet I feel like a man drowning, holding onto a bridle with nothing other on the other end but vast, indifferent sea. I need Caesar back, and if he doesn't return soon, there will be nothing left for him to rule but ashes and a city consumed by its own venom. I need a drink, and then I need to send another legionary patrol to the suburba. The Roman peace, it's turning out, is the hardest war of all. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Courtney. Welcome to the Time Travelers Club. Last time, we left Mark Antony and new daddy Caesar on the banks of the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, where a republic teetered on the edge, and the future of the Western world hanging in the balance. The year's new consuls, Gaius Claudius Marcellus and Lucius Cornelius Lentulus Crus, spat the name of Caesar like a curse. Though Pompey, the renowned general and former ally, stayed in Rome, his shadow stretched across the land. He held the governorship of Spain and commanded the loyalty of several legions, a silent, waiting army. For months in 50 BCE, a precarious set of negotiations had kept the peace hanging by a thread. Caesar, the conqueror of Gaul, stood at the gates of Italy demanding a single, impossible right: to run for consul in absentia while still holding the command of his veteran legions. To step down meant exposing himself to the bitter enemies, chief among them the unyielding moralist Cato. It was Mark Antony, the audacious young tribune, who first tossed a lifeline. He resurrected the earlier radical idea: let both titans surrender their commands and return to the status of simple citizens. Most senators, terrified of the impending clash, cheered the proposal. But the consuls and Cato, consumed by their hatred of Caesar, slammed the door on peace. Antony, undeterred, risked a final, desperate gambit. Caesar would only keep a fraction of his might, 2 legions, and a minor governorship, if they would simply allow him to stand for the consulship from afar. Pompey, surprisingly, was content with this massive concession. But for Cato and Lentulus, it wasn't enough. They wanted Caesar utterly ruined. This is something like you're going to take off your nose to spite your face. Like,
Yeah.
they are the reason this happened.
And even now in modern politics, you see, I mean, there's less here in America anyway, there's less and less of a center every day. But the quote unquote more center, politicians, right? Being like, I feel like that's a good enough terms. And then like this majority of the far ends of it being like, no, that's not good enough. And then you have to fall in line with your party. And this is kind of what's happening here. Pompey's like, he's not really a threat. I mean, he still has his whole army in Spain, and and he's asked, it is unprecedented, and all that. But like, he's willing to compromise. But these other two are absolutely refusing to give an inch, and therefore they would rather risk civil war. One, they're not going to die in. Well, I mean, at least they don't think they're going to fight. But, other people will die for them. And this cause, and yeah, we can see parallels of that kind of stuff running today. It's at the expense of people who don't even have a say.
Exactly.
Who aren't even in the room.
It's selfish men only having their, what I call horse blinders on. They can only see what they want to see, and they refuse to see any collateral damage.
Well, and would they even care?
Exactly.
It's even, they can see it. They just don't give a damn. And
no,
it's
sad.
Yeah, it's sad. And they think, I'm sure that's the other part of this too. They feel like it's worth it. It's worth, like, you would like, oh, it's for no good reason. Oh, they would give you 100 reasons that they would tell you is a good reason. It's because like it's unprecedented, and like what will happen, and like it could cause chaos and ruin, and we've never done anything like it before, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like it's for the sake, it's like, and they would use terminology like I'm willing to risk a war for the freedom of speech, or for the freedom of this constitutional thing. It's language we hear today too. That you are willing to commit atrocities and trample the very thing you're saying you're willing to protect. I'm willing to protect free speech by suppressing certain groups of people that I don't agree with.
Yeah. It's hypocritical at best.
Right.
So the moment the final compromise failed, Antony, fearing the dagger in the dark, fled Rome. He galloped north, seeking the protection of the only man who could defy the Senate, Caesar himself, waiting anxiously in the Cisalpine Gaul. Rome panicked. Within days of Antony's withdrawal, on January 7th, 49 BCE, the Senate reconvened in a fever pitch, driven by Cato's relentless fervor and with Pompey's silent, ominous assent. They passed the ultimate decree, the Senatus Consultum Ultimum. The mandate was a declaration of war. Caesar was stripped of his authority and commanded to return to Rome to stand trial. If he did not instantly disband his army, he would be branded a public enemy. The hopes for a peaceful settlement were not just gone, they were violently extinguished. Caesar heard the news. He saw the flight of Antony, whose person as a tribune was legally sacrosanct. This was a final, unforgivable insult. They had violated the law. They had harmed his ally. With grim resolve, Caesar used the outrage against Antony as his pretext. The moment had arrived. 3 nights later, on January 10th, he led his loyal legions into the south bank of the Rubicon River, the small, insignificant stream that marked the boundary of his province. To cross it was to declare war on the Republic itself.
Yeah, and so I know we've been using a lot of terminology here, like for geography. And I just kind of wanted to like randomly insert it, I guess, here. If you guys don't know, there's Gaul, right? And when we think of Gaul, we tend to think of regions of Spain, France, so on and so forth, right? And that's correct. However, people sometimes, I think when they think of Rome in general, but especially by this time, they're thinking the Italy, period. Like the boot, the whole thing. And that is not the case. So
no.
So there are two terms to keep in mind. There is Transalpine Gaul, right? That is where when we said that New Daddy Caesar's been in Gaul, that's what we're talking about. Transalpine Gaul, over the over the Alps, right? Transalpine. Then there's Cisalpine Gaul. And this is the one that I think might surprise some people if you know, you know, you don't. That essentially the northern part of Italy, right up against like Tuscany and all that. That whole, and so between the Alps, right up until like Tuscany. So like all of northern Italy there, that was, and even to some of the maps, way past that. Like, I mean, like it kind of like circumvents like Tuscany, aka where the Etruscans lived, and goes down the Calf quite a bit, almost halfway down the peninsula, right? That whole region is called Cisalpine Gaul, as in this side of the mountains, right? So the Venetians, and so you got like the Veneti, the Lepetani, the Taurani, and like all these different groups. The Veneti are probably the most famous example of this. They're Celts. They're not Latins. They're not Romans, as at least at this point, right? They are ethnically Celtic people, Gauls, right? So just to keep an eye where we're at right now, we are in Italy. So we're in Italy, firmly in Italy, and the Rubicon River is, like, if you're looking at a map of Italy, right, and you go just above where the cap would be, right, that is where the Rubicon River is. And that is, so like when he's crossing the Rubicon, it is in Italy, not in quote unquote Gaul, as in Transalpine Gaul. So he is firmly in Italy and within throwing distance of Rome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what people forget is that Italy doesn't unify until like 1600s?
No, 1800s. But
1800s.
Even then,
I was
under
close.
the Roman, and if we're like just thinking like Romans, right, culturally, like that's not going to happen until Caesar's death. I mean, yes, it's already starting here, right? Like they have a pretty firm control over this area for a long time by this point. But importantly, right, they are not considered Roman citizens yet. That'll come. That will come pretty soon, I believe, if I remember correctly. But like as of this point, not yet. That is why the Rubicon marks the border between a territory, right, where legally he can do quite a bit more, and Rome proper.
Well, Rome is a
So
city
by
state.
crossing the
Like that's also a huge part here. Rome is a city state.
yes, it's arguably a nation at this point, because of this is the border, right,
Mm-hmm.
of this nation state, if you will, right, legally speaking. Once he crosses that river, it's not like, oh, he made a decision to go fight Rome. It's more than that. Legally, that is the actual hard border. Legally, meaning he just took an army into Rome proper, which is illegal. It's
And
an
an
illegal
invasion.
action
Yeah.
by law. Like you cannot bring an army into Rome,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, not as in like, oh, okay, like they're coming home kind of thing. That's different. But like to bring an army, active army into Rome, active legions, that is no bueno.
Very much no bueno.
So by doing this, he has made officially and legally himself a traitor,
Mm-hmm.
like by law. Now, this is where we get to learn you have to be able to enforce the law in order to, actually mean anything. And
Yep.
we shall see about that.
So Caesar paused. The weight of history pressed down on him. Then, with a cry that echoed through the night, Alea iacta est. He plunged into the freezing water. The civil war had begun. Antony's career from 49 to 45 BCE is a microcosm of the late Republic's decay. It is the story of a man whose virtues, his loyalty, his charisma, his unbreakable will in battle were soldiers' virtues. And it is the tragedy of a man whose vices, his impulsivity, his hedonism, his short temper, were civilian flaws, utterly disqualifying him from the political power Caesar thrust upon him. This is the account of Mark Antony's catastrophic 4 years, where he ascended to the second highest post in Rome, only to be stripped of it all and cast out by the one person he trusted. We analyze the crucial period from the Rubicon crossing to his political exile, a time that forged the figure who would one day challenge Rome itself. The news of Caesar's crossing, that he had gambled everything and marched on Rome, did not arrive as an official dispatch, but as a chilling, unbelievable rumor that swept through the city like a gale.
And like not to make too much of a maybe I'm reaching for this, but giving National Guard invading Washington D.C. vibes. Like,
Yep.
yeah, a
Felt
little
that.
bit.
Felt that.
Gotta bring order. Gotta root out the corruption.
Yay.
With my army, that's not supposed to do that. But and it's illegal, and they're told that that's illegal, and you better stop, but we do it anyway. And like it's like, oh yeah, you can't. Usually, you use that army to put the National Guard or whatever to stop such things from happening, but they're the ones doing it. What do you do?
I wonder.
But anyway, as we just said, the senators who had issued the SCU, that's that order, that we talked about last time, the emergency powers, executive orders, overrides the whole thing. Just days before, were utterly paralyzed by fear. They had confidently expected Caesar to pause, to negotiate, to cower by their decree. They had misjudged him completely. Caesar moved with the speed of a thunderbolt. The image of Caesar's veteran legions, fresh with the conquest of Gaul and honed by 10 years of nonstop brutal fighting, marching unimpeded down Italian roads was a nightmare made real. The politicians realized with horrifying clarity that they had not prepared for this outcome. They had declared war, but they had no army really to fight it. Their fatal error was in believing that Pompey, their military savior, the Golden Boy, had everything under control. Which we love that, right? It's like they pick a fight and then run behind the big brother, like,
Exactly.
like, protect me from my own actions. And like, what?
I am not ready to bear the weight of my own consequences. Take it for me. You got this, right?
Which, I mean, like, Pompey is not some innocent figure here, don't get me wrong, but like, we did see that he was trying to at least, it was more important for him to just like, he wasn't even really mad at what Caesar was trying to do, because I'm sure he wished he could do it himself, but he didn't want, of course, Caesar challenging his authority or anything, So as long as he could not be a threat, he didn't care. But no, these fuckers with their big ideas who've never fought anything for real, they haven't really been at the common level, had the audacity. They were like, well, the law says you can't. Oh, but Pompey, he's doing it. The law says he can't.
Oh my
And he's like, yep, that's what I was trying to avoid, guys. What I was trying to avoid.
Good job, boys. You fucked it up.
But Pompey's pretty confident, right? He's a hotshot. He's won a lot of shit. So it's not like he's quaking in his boots quite yet.
Not yet.
Nah, but he does see some writing on the wall, right? So Golden Boy Pompey, for his part, was initially serene, maybe even a little arrogant. He had been the one to reassure the panicked Senate. He had boasted that he only needed to stamp his foot on the ground to conjure legions of fighting men. He was the hero who had cleared the Mediterranean of pirates, defeated Mithridates, and Caesar was merely his former son-in-law and protege.
Oh my god, the arrogance.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and to be fair, it is, at least it's earned, right?
Yeah.
It's earned. He did do those things. He did fucking wipe out those pirates. He took them all out with something that they had struggled with for a long time. And yes, he went to Pontus and kicked some ass on top of all the crazy stuff that had been going on. Like, his accomplishments were earned more so than Crassus, but he did earn it, right? Sometimes one could argue, yes, it was kind of handed to him. Or you could argue he just knew how to read a situation and strike when it was right. He was good at finding opportunity. And rather at this being dumb luck or something, I feel like that takes agency away from him. But he is also completely underselling the fact that Caesar just took over Gaul, Transalpine Gaul, right? Spain had kind of been under their control for a while, right? Because they had been trading partners. There was civilization already there, one they had loved to try and cover. But like, they were relatively, Latinized and all that for a while by that point. But like, those wild areas beyond the Alps and going as far as Britain, right? Like, that's nothing. He went to the edge of the known world. And came back. That's insane, and he's underestimating that. He is underestimating that he's been out of the game for quite a while now. Caesar's still in it, and they've been in it for 10 years. Like, there's a bond there. And I think he just didn't realize he lost touch.
Pompey needed to touch grass.
But he's going to find out quick. Spoiler alert. But as the days passed, and reports of Caesar's swift progress filtered in, Pompey's composure shattered. He had gravely underestimated Caesar's decisiveness and the deep loyalty of his troops, who again had been with him for 10 years in quote-unquote savage lands. Worse, he had discovered that the legions he commanded in Italy were not nearly as loyal or as numerous as he had promised the Senate. Bro. This sounds familiar.
It
The
does.
local levies were slow to materialize, and Caesar's forces were already closing in. Maybe some of these local levies, too, were like, well, if we drag our feet, let's see how this works out.
Why would they
Go
want
with,
to fight a rich man's problem? Why?
well, I mean, and so
For what?
Caesar's a rich man, too. But, like, there is that. But there's also opportunists here, right? They're like,
Yes.
well, if we drag our feet, and Pompey and it looks like Pompey's getting his shit together, we can join him and be like, sorry, logistics. But if Pompey falls flat on his face, they can decide to back Caesar instead.
Mm-hmm.
They're just trying to, and like, that happens all the time. And like, we're not mad about it. Like, I mean, if you're going to lay your life on the line,
Might as well be for the winning side.
Right. Especially that's why civil wars are so messy, because it's like, yeah, you're not really going to see a ton of that if you're fighting a foreign war, but internally, like, these are both Romans.
Yep.
Right? So the strategic decision that was made was sudden and devastating. Rome could not be defended. The currently not so golden boy Pompey convinced the consuls and the majority of the Senate that they must abandon the city immediately. Imagine that. This person that you are looking at as like the defender and all that is pretty much like, guys, we fucked. We need to get out of here. Imagine if the president of the United States said, yo, yeah, we have to abandon DC right now. Imagine the chaos.
Yep.
The fear, right? Like that's like, imagine that, guys. That's what we're dealing with here. His plan was to retreat south, evacuate Italy, and raise a massive army in the eastern provinces, aka Greece, which were rich in resources and firmly under his control. The resulting scene was one of unparalleled chaos. On foot, by litter, and by carriage, senators, magistrates, and other dignitaries fled the capital in a terrified, disorganized stampede. They did not even stop to secure the state's vast treasury. That's telling you how these old rich white dudes were so scared they left the money behind and didn't even lock they forgot to lock the door.
That's hilarious.
And these were sacred reserves of gold stored in the temple of Saturn. In their haste, they left it entirely unguarded.
Oh my God.
We love this. It's a shit show. Cato,
to say the least.
Cato, the fiercest antagonist of Caesar, was of course among the fugitives, carrying the entire weight of his failed political resistance on his shoulders. We're in this because of you, Guy, and Lentulus, but Cato was real loud. You know, like, oh, In a matter of days, the Eternal City, the center of the Republic's power, was just abandoned by its government, leaving the doors wide open for the invading quote-unquote public enemy of Julius Caesar. And so, Caesar entered Rome not as a conqueror in battle, but as the ghost of a threat the Senate had conjured and then failed to manage. His war, ironically, was a bloodless march through Italy as his enemies ran towards the coast. And when I say bloodless, I'm sure there was some pillaging. Maybe I don't know how intense. He's historically pretty well known. I don't know offhand. I'm sure I could go find out, but I'm not going to. He was pretty good about, like, you know, and I'm sure a lot of these people aren't going to attack their own, right?
No, because they have to live there.
Right. But, like, at the same time, like, if people resist, you know.
Yeah, I got you.
But I have a feeling that a lot of these peasants and stuff, right? Those are the people who are left behind, the common people. They ain't fighting this. They're like, nope, that's a big nope from me. You go right on through.
Pretty much.
New boss, same as the old boss.
Pretty much. Yeah. Exactly. It's just like a merger happening, and the C-suites get weeded out.
And this isn't even a lot of their first rodeo with this. How many times have we seen this? We say the Civil War, but like we've already seen several of them.
Yep.
Pompey had to flee on back at one point because of one when he was a wee lad, and all of that. Like they remember purges. They're like, here we go again. You know the drill. Everyone stay inside. If they ask for lodgings or some supplies, here you go. Thank you very much. They're the ones with the pointy sticks, and we are peasants. So
yep. Which is, it sucks. Yeah. But Caesar's initial objectives after taking Rome were twofold: stabilize the political center and neutralize Pompey's standing legions in the west before confronting Pompey himself in the east. So Caesar entered Rome on February of 49 BCE as an outlaw. But he behaved with calculated restraint, seeking to project an image of clemency rather than tyranny. Unprecedented up to this point in Roman history, he refused to prosecute or harm any of the senators or officials who had fled, distinguishing himself from the ruthless actions of previous Roman civil wars. Remember back to Marius, Sulla, and even what happened during the Catiline conspiracy. Next, perhaps most crucially, he secured the vast public treasury, the Aerarium, in the Temple of Saturn, which the fleeing Senate had left untouched. This immense amount of gold provided him with the necessary funds to pay his troops and finance the coming war. Finally, since the consuls and most senior magistrates had fled, Caesar appointed loyalists to administrative posts to ensure the government continued to function, thereby legitimizing his control over Italy. Mark Antony, his key ally, was left in charge of Italy as his deputy. Caesar knew he could not chase Pompey to the east while 7 veteran legions loyal to Pompey remained active in the province of Hispania. These forces posed an immediate and massive threat to his rear, capable of cutting off his supply lines or even invading Italy in his absence. Caesar made the bold decision to move west first. This strategy demonstrated his keen military mind. Deal with the threat closest to home before engaging the main enemy. Caesar trusted only 2 men to manage the affairs of the West in his absence: Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, who handled Rome's political administration, and Mark Antony, who was appointed propraetor and supreme military commander of Italy.
I mean, yeah, that was so nice of them to leave all that money for him. Like,
here you go. Here is your capability of fucking us up. Ta-da!
Right. I mean, think about that. Like, first of all, like, they don't have money. I mean, they have their own money, but, that's not as good as the government's money, like, and that's the other thing is like all that treasury that would pay them and all these government officials who just bounced, right?
Yeah.
Now he's got all that money for a much smaller group of people, right? So yes, he's spending that money on the army and himself and shit like that. But like, it's because there is excess, right? Versus like if he had a fully functioning government, he would have to try and still maintain that government and fund an army. So they just left him such a big, beautiful prize. But that does say, though, his level of control and the respect these people have of him, because think about that. You walk into essentially that whole scene from Aladdin, the Cave of Wonders, and yet he's able to organize everybody. No one's there's no looting. No one's being a douche, And like they could chalk that up as, oh, well, that's because they wouldn't do that to their own people. Please, we've seen it happen before. It's because they respect him, and he understood that that's a bad look. They're already painting him to be this boogeyman, like he's lawless and everything else. So he's walking on eggshells, right? That's why he's offering clemency here, because he has to be different, right? Otherwise, he's proving them right.
He has to not be the boogeyman. He has to show that, hey,
Right.
they're lying.
They're
Everything
lying.
they said is a lie.
They're lying. Yes, what I did was quote unquote illegal, if he would even admit that, but it's because I care about Rome. They're the ones who are corrupt. See, I'm here. They said I was going to loot and hurt everybody. They left you. They abandoned you to a monster, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And look, I'm not a monster, but they thought I was, and yet they abandoned you. But that's okay, because anyone who realizes they may have overreacted, I'm here. And I'm willing to talk, and I'm willing to, forgive you. And that is a big MO that he does a lot.
It's so manipulative.
It is very manipulative. We saw it with Cleopatra. Remember when because Pompey, spoiler alert, dies, because Eudae's chasing him, right? This is what we're leading up to here, right about here. Mm-hmm. But that was his plan. Capture Pompey, make a big thing where he forgives him. And now Pompey owes him his life. And if he refuses, he looks like a big dick.
Yep.
It's smart. It is very manipulative. I don't know if I'm mad about it, because again, what's the alternative? You purge? Yikes. At least this does. It's manipulative, sure, but at least it's not ending in bloodshed, Like, it is in a way unifying everybody. A cynical person could say it's just for his own. You could be a cynic and maybe you're right, and it's just like, oh, well, he's only doing it for his own benefit. Or you could be an optimist and be like, an idealist and be like, no, I mean, yeah, but he was, because he believed he was doing the right thing and he was going to better Rome. We're not in his head, so we can't tell you what one's actually real. Mm-hmm. His enemies would say one, he would say another. Ultimately, we can just speak for the results, and the results are that when he does these kinds of things, there is minimal bloodshed, and he does at least give the illusion of choice, right? So, but yeah. So we've talked a lot about other people, right? But this is the Mark Antony story, right? Mm-hmm. So while this is all important context, because he is not really the main character yet, this is how we see him develop, right? Mm-hmm. So now we are going to focus on him again while Caesar is in Spain, right? And we'll touch a little bit about how that all goes, but we're going to try to focus more on what Antony was doing through all of this. So rather than focus on what Caesar's doing, it's going to be what was Antony doing while Caesar was doing all of this, right? Mm-hmm. So this was Antony's first taste of executive power over civilian life, right? And this was a test. To be honest, he failed. He done fucked up. Whoopsie daisies. But you know what? I mean, I'm not going to judge him too harsh, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he expected this. And even if he did, right? I don't know. When's the last time you've ran an entire government, especially one that was falling apart due to civil war, Courtney?
Good question.
With no background and experience and running, holding an office like that. Yes, he had some political life. We've seen that, but it's there's a difference between some of this ceremonial stuff and just being a speaker and the one who's making decisions and making in the logistical stuff.
Yeah. That
was not what his job was. Maybe if he had been a quartermaster or something, sure, but that's not. So with that being said, as Caesar was crushed the Pompeian forces in Spain, Antony was responsible for the logistical spine of the entire war effort. No pressure. This involves several crucial, tedious, and essential tasks. Antony had to scour the coast of Italy for every available transport ship, requisitioning vessels, which, of course, everyone loves when you come over and you're like, hey, I'm taking your car.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Historically speaking, people don't love it when you take their ship. When you're like, hey, the government needs this, thanks. It's like you'll see it. It happens in England, and that's like one of the more famous examples, like when Queen Elizabeth I, to stop the Spanish Armada, does this, right? And like there is a historical precedent of this, but in almost every case, no one's thrilled.
No one's
hey,
happy
I need to
with
borrow
it.
your
Absolutely
ship,
not.
and I may not give it back to you in one piece. Thanks.
Appreciate you.
Sometimes they offer money. Sometimes they don't. So, yeah. And then he's trying to navigate or coordinate all these naval patrols to counter the Pompeian raiders. Because again, remember, Pompey stopped all those pirates. He has naval experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he knows how to coordinate all this. And all of this requires a huge amount of bureaucratic organization. The bureaucracy that left Rome, they're gone, right? They're with Pompey. So there is something to be said. Yes, they were dumb and left all their money behind, but they took all the trained people with them.
That they did.
So Mark Antony gets this bad rap, and a lot of it might be propaganda, as we'll see, but I'm not sure how much I truly believe all of it. But if even most of it's true, trying to do all of this, run a country, run these really complex, like maneuvers and patrols and systems with none of the bureaucracy or staff, you're on a skeleton crew.
You're on worse than a
How
skeleton
successful.
crew, actually.
Right. And you yourself don't have tons of experience, right, with this.
Yeah.
Like you're being kind of set up for failure. And I feel like it's kind of unfair to judge him too harshly here, right?
I would definitely agree.
So the next thing was he needed to maintain order and supplies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Italy was teetering on the edge of chaos. Because again, your entire government and bureaucracy and everything that keeps it running is gone. A government shutdown, if you will, where you can't get SNAP or anything like that. Which Rome actually had a similar system at this time. In the sense that the common people had access to bread almost as a right, it's complicated, but like essentially there was like a government issued grain dole that people had access to, right? Yeah. So that's why these peasants could stay alive, because a lot of them did not even make money. Or they had to go ask like the wealthy men of the city for money in the morning, and then it was custom for those men to then hand out money to those people. Like it's like a weird cultural thing. But like there was this like guaranteed grain so people stayed alive. The problem with that is that when the bureaucracy or the supply itself is compromised, now what?
Now
everyone relies on that. There is no backup.
Yeah.
So he's trying to run all that now. And yep, that's not great. Because the people like where they import from Egypt, right? Even if like they're not refusing, right? Which as we know, they have their own civil war and shit going on right now. Things aren't looking so hot in Egypt, the breadbasket of the world at this point. But even if they have the extra supplies and stuff, are you as a merchant really going to want to risk getting pirated? Essentially, where Pompey could just take all your crap? Like, it's too high of a risk. So you're going to see a lot of that's going to come until they can secure those lanes. That's going to slow way down.
It's going to slow everything down. It really does. Because
And
you
then,
have the way that you were doing it before,
right.
and the people that were running it are now technically on the enemy side.
Yeah. And then that abrupt halt of commerce meant crippling debt and poverty, right? Like, people's livelihoods are on the line. The merchant who imports his good and makes and sells it, right? Like, all of that. And the longer that goes on,
the worse it gets.
well, it gets. And it's like people will lose businesses. People will not be able to bounce back or come back. And so even if you can get this stuff under control, the longer this goes on, the longer it's going to take for your economy and your civilization to bounce back.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure on someone.
That's so much pressure.
With none
Mentally,
of the staff.
That's taxing.
And then finally, there's managing the veterans, right? 10 years they've been gone. And I'm sure it's starting to feel like every time they go, okay, guys, one more battle and we're done. Just one more thing. Just one more. It was supposed to be done with Vercingetorix. Then they had to clean it up, do the cleanup operations. Fine. We have to maintain control. Fine. Now, well, we were supposed to go home, but now we're starting the Civil War. So just until we can get control over Rome. But now we gotta go to Spain.
That dangling carrot never goes away, guys.
And the thing is with Caesar, they might buy it. This is Caesar's second in command. And the longer your main guy is gone, the harder it is to maintain control of this, right? Especially when they're pretty much home. It's like, you're telling me don't get too comfortable. Like,
yeah,
fuck you. Like, so
question mark?
Caesar, right. So Caesar's veterans, having just won Italy in their eyes, were expecting immediate rewards and were often restless and mutinous. Because at the end of the day, no, they're not thinking these big macro issues, right? Like, Caesar knows, like, hey, I just can't take the money. The money has to be used for certain things, right?
Yeah.
And yes, they didn't take all the money in the treasury. But in foreign wars, it's go nuts, boys.
Well, of course.
So they've been good boys. They didn't steal, they didn't loot, they didn't take everybody's shit. But they need to get paid too. And they've been doing this scrap for 10 years. They're done. They're over it. And trying to keep them in it is the hard part. So Antony handled the military security well enough. I mean, that I could see, even, yes, he is second in command, but this is where he's, he can inspire people. They've seen him fight. They know he's one of them, right? So that was, out of the three, maybe one of the easier ones for him, right? It will become more of a struggle as we go on, but at least for now, he's pretty good at keeping the soldiers loyal and suppressing any minor revolts. But it's his administrative failures that become legendary. The historian Plutarch paints a damning, detailed portrait of Antony during this period, focusing on his visible contempt for the Roman discipline. He is often seen in public, not in military dress, but draped in theatrical purple cloaks, which purple, I mean, most people understand that purple's important, right? It's saved for kings, blah, blah, blah. But in Rome does not have kings.
No kings in Rome.
No kings, period. So if you're dressing like a king and acting like a king, not good. Also, it's giving, like, those delinquent Greek Eastern people. You're decadent. And remember, we talked about that back in, like, the Ptolemaic episode and with Cleopatra, right? That the Romans have a stick up their butt. So if you're dressing fancy, apparently that's not a good look.
Not in Rome.
So there's so much to it. And also the cost of purple is astronomical, right?
We've talked
So,
about where purple comes from before. You remember the
yeah.
snails? Do you
Mm-hmm.
remember the snails, guys?
Snail mucus.
Snail mucus. And it is expensive. The reason why it
Mm-hmm.
was only reserved for kings, for emperors, for those that are like, I'm in fucking charge, is because this is such a limited supply. You
Yeah.
have
And
to
there
individually go after tiny little snails and their mucus.
thousands of them to create just like a yard of fabric.
Yep.
Thousands, right? And also, I believe these snails are venomous. I could be wrong. I know a lot of conch snails. I think they're in that conch family. Have
I
like a
believe they are.
venomous little tail end.
Yeah.
But either way, it's tedious as hell. And it's a whole thing. Now, that's not to say that there weren't other things that were quote unquote purple. They were lesser quality and they would fade very, very quickly. So I'm going to guess he's not getting knockoff. He's getting Gucci. Okay. He's getting himself some Valentina, right? He getting him some Coco Chanel. He ain't doing no knockoff.
It ain't no knockoff.
He ain't going to the Gap. He ain't going to H&M.
Nope.
Nope. But so otherwise they wouldn't be so mad. So he's looking fabulous, which is frowned upon. And he traveled with a notorious retinue, including the beautiful actress Cytheris, who accompanied him everywhere. Now, Courtney, do you know anything about actresses at this time and like where they stood on the social ladder?
It's very, very towards the bottom, if not at the very dregs of society.
You might be better off just being a prostitute.
Possibly.
At least they would say you're not a liar. That's dead ass. Dead ass what they felt. Actresses were not to be trusted. They were whores, harlots, and morally corrupt people. Because how dare a woman, especially a woman, men too to a degree, but women especially, right? You are selling your body for the entertainment of others. Your whole job is to lie. We love watching you do it, but we're going to judge you for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is of course. So if you're imagining, Mark Antony looking dapper with, like an actress on his arm, like Scarlett Johansson, classy folks or whatever, right?
No,
this is not it.
This is not that.
That
No,
is very modern.
Like, I can't fucking wait until we get into opera culture. Oh, yeah. My God.
It is not until the late 1900s, early, 20th century. Well, sorry, late, 19th century. I don't know why I said 19th. Late 19th century, going into the 20th century. And even then, women are scandalized as actresses. Look at, like Marilyn Monroe and, and why am I blanking? Elizabeth Taylor and
Judy Garland,
yes, they're glamorous
Shirley
women,
Temple.
but there's this right, like there's always this glamorous. They're glamorous, but there's undercurrent, like but they're on drugs. They're sleeping around and like maybe getting involved with people they shouldn't. Even now it's people go like, isn't that weird that Marilyn Monroe was like boinking JFK?
Who fucking
And when we
cares?
actually sit down and think. And when we just really think about it, it's like to me, no, it's not that weird. They're both wealthy people and they got to know each other, whatever. But it's the fact that he's respectable political. So what does that make her? Right. So, and it's with Sarah Bernhardt in the late, 19th century, early 20th century, that starts to change. But even then she's viewed as, kind of scandalous. And people love that, but it's like, they're not as necessarily saying she's a bad person, but like a lot of people like she's glamorous and we love her. But if my daughter were telling me she wanted to be like her, I would never, but that's not where we're at. We are like, you might look great and all that, but a lot of times actresses also were straight up prostitutes too. right?
Yep.
That did happen. So, yeah. Being seen with one brought you down too, because that meant you're willing to hang out with someone with questionable morals, someone very beneath your station.
All of it's really fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
bad.
But this is my favorite part. And this is where I go, okay, guys, maybe propaganda. Maybe we need to look at some of this, right? And take it with a grain of salt. Because again, just alone that actress stuff, like she could have been a very nice person. She's honestly just being judged because of what society viewed her as, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cleopatra's going to be a victim of that too, as we know. Powerful women who have agency, frowned upon. Must be whores. Must be trying to get something out of it. And therefore, the men who are willing to entertain those women or treat them with dignity and respect must be
just as bad.
Just as bad at best, or idiots or simpletons being manipulated. Rather than also, it takes agency away from them too. So, but this is my favorite part. So he apparently rode through the streets of Rome, not in a modest carriage, which I don't know. Back then, I feel like if you have a carriage, how modest can you be? But whatever. But no. He was in a gilded lion-drawn chariot. Now, what are your thoughts on this, Courtney?
My thoughts are, what the fuck, guys? Yeah, that,
first of all,
to me, that reads absolute propaganda. Where the fuck is he getting the lion from? Did they just go across? I know they had it for like gladiator shit, right? We know that they did.
But that's not going on right now.
No,
you're
it's
government
not.
shutdown. You're essentially in a government shutdown. Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
No.
Where's
second of all,
whose gilded carriage or gilded lion-drawn chariot did he take?
Right. Like, that's like, also how the logistics. Have you ever tried making your cat do anything?
Yes.
I try to give him, I have to give my cat Oliver meds like Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, because he's a allergy boy, and he'll scratch himself to baldness and death if we don't give him very expensive meds. And he feels a lot better when he's on those meds, and he has all of his hair and fur, which is lovely. But he doesn't seem to understand that or appreciate it. And he's smart. So he knows the days, and he knows that if you try to lure him out, and he'll avoid you like the plague, at least till morning. So then you have to drag him out and hold him, and he's not going to hurt you or nothing, but he's going to make it as difficult as possible for you to get your hands on him.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, come on, it takes 3 seconds and it's over, and it's not even that big of a deal. So just trying to give my house cat meds, let alone make him a predator, one of the largest of the cats, pull a chariot? Now.
No, I don't believe it. Not for a second.
This is all leaning to me to some kind of racism, okay? Because think about where Antony was for a little while, right? And later he will be associated with the East, right? Because that's his territory. So Greece, right? Anatolia. Now, they did dress in silks. They did do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Decadence, as we talked about with the Ptolemies and stuff. Then, yes, where's the birthplace of drama? Athens, Greece, right? And he appreciated theater, sure. And whereas theater was really looked down upon by the Romans. And so, yes, making him be with an actress, like that's such a Greek thing, which, I mean, they were not viewed well there either, but, that's not really the point here. It's just to make him more Eastern, right? Not one of them. And then finally, this whole lion thing. When we were talking about Isis and Dionysus before, we did cover some ancient mother goddesses who had whose symbols were lions, right?
Yes.
So it's a double whammy of it being not only an Eastern vibe, but also feminine. Also,
Yes.
they did not believe that lions could mate with each other.
Really? That I did not
Mhm.
know.
That's why at one point, Atalanta is in like whoever her boy toy is or whatever. Artemis turns or whoever turns them into lions, and everyone's okay. What's so bad about that? Well, because they were in love. In theory, they couldn't mate together.
You see, that never crossed my mind. Okay.
Either way, and if nothing else, it's just the opulence of it all, right? Like as your
Yeah.
people starve, you've got lion drawn chariots and can afford actresses and who are just whores and wear purple all the time. Here's the thing. This is all written in hindsight by
Mm-hmm.
people who were influenced by people who didn't like Antony. My guess is that while he may not have been super great at the administration of things, he had very limited supplies. He had very limited like resources in general, people, manpower, all that. And it was his first time with this, and he was kind of left without any assistance or guidance. And he
Mm-hmm.
probably did make some mistakes, but even if he hadn't, there are just some things when you have so limited resources that you can do. And so
Yeah.
people were upset because they didn't understand that. They just know that they're hungry. They just know that things aren't getting done and they're tired of it. And
Mm-hmm.
they know that when they complain, people lash out
Yeah.
because sometimes that's what they resort to. And so you're
Well,
going to blame him.
if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Hmm.
The very base one is food
Right.
and security. And
And we're not even
we
meeting that.
are not meeting that. So we are not even able to access the higher planes of thought. It is more of, I am hungry, you are in my way, it is your fault.
Yep. They must be hoarding it. They must be hiding it. They must be mismanaging it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sometimes that is true. I don't think in this scenario that is the
Agreed.
he may have been that's to say that I don't think it comes from a vacuum. He may have been indifferent. He may have been aloof. He may not have been able to read the room with the common people, right? Because he was not common. Um, Yet, I don't think that he was, you know, banging an actress in a purple toga while lions were drawing his chariot through the town.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that at all.
That's and that's why it's important to cover these things because like that's the kind of stuff people will say like oh like the summarized version was that he was mismanaging stuff and like super opulent and not caring about people and that would be the history, right? And then when you read the text you're like okay, so first of all, why even at face value some people take this word for word and take it serious. I'm like, if you actually sit down to think about it, how the fuck is he have a lion drawn chariot?
Yeah.
Right. So all I'm saying is that maybe propaganda. Either, but I do believe that things weren't going great. So, to the conservative, still powerful senators who had remained in Rome, like Cicero, who observed the spectacle with disgust, apparently, because here we are again. Who's your eyewitness to all this?
Mm-hmm. Fucking Cicero.
Cicero.
Fucking
And we know we
Cicero.
don't like him.
Mm-hmm.
So, great. When I say grain of salt, the whole Dead Sea, guys. So this, but to him, apparently, this whole thing was an abomination. Which, if it's true, I guess maybe it is. And that it wasn't just indulgence; it was a visible sign that the new regime was to be run by coarse, hedonistic revolutionaries with no respect for Roman gravitas. Yeah, again, great, a whole Dead Sea of salt.
Yes.
But it does show that maybe Antony showed some indifference to economic distress, right? The citizens were clamoring for debt relief, lower rent, stable grain prices.
Sounds familiar.
Hmm. And Antony was focused on the grandeur of command and the logistics of war, and delegated these civilian crises often to incompetent subordinates. Now, again, is that his fault? That might
Technically,
be
yes.
all who's left. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
technically yes, but also we're in
let's
we're in
find the
gray
competent
area.
ones then. Like, are they even
Yes.
there?
Exactly.
Right. And even if they are there, are they willing to help?
Exactly.
Cicero ain't. I don't see Cicero saying how he was helping anybody. So we got that. Real good at complaining and pointing things out, but no solutions I've noticed. But yes. So with that being said, and again, he is going to be good at the military stuff. That's stuff he's familiar with. He's not familiar with rent, how to lower rent, grain dolage, or any of that. That's not his forte. And I don't think that's necessarily his fault, right?
Yeah.
But there is a result. Doesn't matter if it's his fault or not. The result is people are starving and they're pissed. And he doesn't know how to handle it. This tenure sowed up the first deep seeds of political opposition to Antony's rule and confirmed the worst fear of the optimates.
As all of this was going on, Caesar personally led his forces on a grueling, rapid march across Gaul and over the Pyrenees. The Pompeian commanders in Spain concentrated their main forces at Lerda. Caesar avoided a costly pitched battle. Instead, he used brilliant maneuvering, superior engineering, building bridges and diversionary trenches to control the flow of the rivers, Sacorus and Signa, and a psychological war of attrition to surround and isolate the Pompeian army. The Pompeian commanders, realizing their supply lines were cut and their men were demoralized, were forced to surrender their entire army without a major engagement. Caesar, again, showed clemency, allowing the officers and soldiers to go free, requiring only that the legions be disbanded. By 49 BCE, Caesar had secured the Roman West, Italy, Gaul, and Spain, eliminating the vast majority of Pompey's veteran troops and his cash flow. He was now free, with a secure base and immense financial resources that once served Pompey, to pursue him across the Adriatic into the east. Antony's administrative failure was quickly redeemed by military necessity. The year 48 BCE opened with Caesar in Greece, facing the full might of Pompey. But Caesar's initial crossing was a disaster in the making. He had only managed to ferry 2 legions across the Adriatic, leaving 5 veteran legions trapped at Brundisium.
There you go.
Worse, Pompey's lieutenants had inflicted a catastrophic naval defeat on Caesar's remaining fleet in Illyricum. Pompey now commanded the seas, and his admiral, Lucius Scribonius Libo, enforced a ruthless blockade. Caesar was isolated, outmatched, and facing potential annihilation by starvation if supplies couldn't get through. The pressure on Antony was immense. Caesar sent urgent, almost desperate messages. Deliver the legions or the war is lost. Antony, energized by military action and recognizing the gravity of the situation, mobilized immediately. He commandeered every available transport, ignoring the risks of the treacherous winter seas. He utilized a brilliant piece of misdirection, using a handful of small, fast decoy ships to lure Libo's main squadron into a pursuit, scattering the blockade fleet just enough to create a window. And then, under cover of a sudden violent storm that kept the main Pompeian fleet at bay, Antony executed a harrowing, high-speed winter crossing. This was a feat of unparalleled logistical and naval daring. The arrival of Antony's 5 legions instantly doubled Caesar's fighting force and provided essential supplies. And it transformed a desperate holding action into a viable campaign. Without Antony's nerve and speed, the Greek campaign would have ended in disaster for Caesar.
And I will say maybe a little bit of luck, because God forbid that storm. You know, like
that
oh.
Dionysus was watching him that day.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, I mean, yes. Is it daring all those things? Absolutely. There's a point where it's in God's hands, if you will. You can't control storms. Choosing to go into it, yes, your people can be as prepared as possibly be, but even the most experienced sailors today take that deadly serious. So, and the Romans were not seafaring peoples.
Yeah.
So he was just luck. There was a little bit of luck there, but
a lot of bit of luck.
But it paid off, right?
Mm-hmm.
After uniting their forces, Caesar and Antony marched to confront Pompey near the vital port of Dyrrhachium. Near the vital port of Dyrrhachium, Pompey, with his superior numbers and excellent supply lines, entrenched himself in a massive fortified camp. Caesar, always preferring ingenuity over attrition, undertook one of the most daring and exhausting siege operations in history, building a vast circumvallatium of 15-mile-long ring of earthworks, walls, and forts around Pompey's position, aiming to starve the numerically superior force. It reminds me a lot of his battle with Vercingetorix, right?
Absolutely.
This
That
is not.
circumvallation is gigantic.
It is. It's bigger than any of the ones he's done before. But like, if you've done it once,
true.
You know, so like, and that's the thing. Like, he has the benefit, at least in as of right now, of he can still get supplies.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough, and this is winter campaigning, which is usually a big no. But it is it's while it is ingenious, there is attrition here. Who's going to make it the longest? And in this scenario, having more people, not an asset.
Not good scenario. Really.
Faster you're going to go through supplies.
Yep.
So, Antony was given command over a crucial central sector of these lines. The fighting was fierce and protracted. The troops were exhausted by continuous engineering work and constant skirmishing. The crisis came when Pompey launched a massive counterattack and breached Caesar's lines. Antony's forces were caught in the rout. Plutarch notes a division commanded by Antony's relative, Publius Cornelius Sulla, not that Sulla, different Sulla, broke and fled. It was here that Antony's primal, soldierly leadership shone brightest. Ignoring his own safety, he personally rode through the line, his massive frame and thundering voice, rallying the fleeing troops, restoring discipline, and ensuring the breach was contained before Pompey could fully exploit it. And we're seeing the other end of that propaganda, okay? Mm-hmm. It is a very glorious image. I would say probably most of that's true. May have been a little more packed, like, get the fuck back in there, get in there. Not so much like, come on, men, well, tally ho. Like, I doubt that. But thunderous, booming voice, massive frame. I'm sure he was a cutting image, but I'm sure there was quite a bit like some panic.
Oh, absolutely.
But the damage was immense. but the army did not disintegrate. Caesar was forced into a humiliating retreat, though, one of the greatest military defeats of his career. And for a moment, it was true despair. Caesar reportedly said that the loss was Pompey's victory, but Pompey, not in the habit of victory, failed to press the attack that could have ended the war then and there. This strategic error gave Caesar time to recoup in Thessaly.
The final decisive battle took place at the plain of Pharsalus on August 9th, 48 BCE. It was the moment of truth. Caesar was outnumbered 2-1. 22,000 veterans against 45,000 Pompeian infantry. In this critical formation, where every commander's nerve was tested, Caesar chose his best for the key positions. He commanded the right wing himself, and our favorite lovable jock was, of course, commanded the indispensable anchor position of the left wing. He might not have been the best administrator, but you gotta admit, give the boy a sword and point, and he will get the job done. The command of the left wing was a statement of ultimate trust, strategically and psychologically. It rested on the bank of the Inopius River, forming the unyielding pivot for Caesar's entire formation. Antony's task was to absorb the weight of the main Pompeian infantry assault, the largest force on the field, hold the line rigid, and prevent any collapse that would allow Pompey to roll up the entire army. This required unwavering resolve and perfect timing. A task Antony executed flawlessly. While Caesar was executing his tactical maneuver on the right, shattering Pompey's cavalry with his hidden reserve line, Antony was performing the brutal, necessary work of holding the line. His disciplined veterans absorbed the initial shock of the main advance. They remained unbroken, unflinching, until the cavalry rout allowed Caesar's victorious troops to turn the flank and roll up Pompey's entire infantry. The victory was absolute. Like, can we get a round of applause for Caesar and Antony?
Yeah.
Like, yes. Oh my gosh.
It just proves the quality of troops is more important than the quantity here, right? Because
really
all
does.
these troops on Pompey's end, these, like, his good old boys, they were in Spain. They're done. They're out of this. So yeah, he has 45,000 troops, but they're all like Greek, new young Greek kids.
Yeah.
So like they're not going to hold. They're not going to remember that time, as a sword and javelin come barreling towards them. They're not going to remember.
Flinch.
Remember that one time Caesar and I were back to back fighting? Remember that time the Gauls came in, bare chested, screaming, and we made it? That little bit of psychology right there that might allow, that's all the difference between whether someone holds ground or runs.
Absolutely.
And you have to have enough of those people to hold that ground to maintain. No. And even then, to notice the slight shift in the movement of people, like you're noticing the crowd moving slightly this way. Oh shit, they're going to come along the side. And you have moments to figure that out.
Yes, you do. It is
and
instantaneous and
know.
It's instinctual. It really is instinctual. And these guys have honed this talent, this instinct for 10 years.
Going on 11.
Going on 11. Pharsalus secured Caesar's place as the world's sole military master, and Antony as the second. He was the indispensable general, the man whose unbreakable loyalty held the line. Following the total victory at Pharsalus and Pompey's subsequent assassination in Egypt, Caesar was appointed dictator in absentia. The position was granted for a full year, the most important civilian and military post in the entire Roman state, second only to the dictator, was the master of the horse, Magister Equitum. It was the dictator's deputy, the executive ruler of Italy, Caesar, now pursuing the last Pompeian forces and immersed in the drama of Cleopatra, gave this office to Mark Antony. It was
So,
Antony's. Go ahead.
sorry. Nope, keep going. I thought that was the end of the sentence. Keep going.
No, it was Antony's reward, his ultimate opportunity for glory and political maturity. It became his ultimate ruin, though.
So, we're hearing this word now on a very official basis, dictator, right? And I'd like to take a moment, just a moment, to really help us understand what that means, right? Because modern listeners, right, they're going, like, there's ancient listeners, I guess, but modern people today, right, who are listening right now, you're all going to have a certain image of what a dictator is, right? And it's probably not good, right?
Yeah.
And not to say that this is either, but it is different, right? It is, the word modern term for dictator is inspired by this particular position, right? So Caesar is not the first person to be a dictator in Rome, okay? So a dictator in this context was a magistrate appointed to have absolute power during a time of crisis, okay?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times up until this point too, it was kind of an elected thing, right? Essentially, it was saying that the government was in such bad shape or something was so crazy right now, like maybe a war or something, where you had a lot of people arguing, like, and you just needed someone, like, we don't have time for this. We need someone who could just make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, you hand that over, and you're like, okay, shiz really hit the fan. You have a year to fix it. We won't, and you won't, we won't get in your way. There will be no consequences. Nothing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnatus is one of the most famous examples of this, the legendary version of this, right? Where he was some guy, rich guy from the countryside, a humble farmer with a lot of land, who was super duper respected. Rome was in crisis. And so they called on Cincinnatus, who was dictator, and he fixed it. And then when his time came at the end, he laid it all down and walked away from it. Right? He's the one who codified the laws and did everything that needed to happen. And then he kept his promise and walked away when his time was up. So that is the history of like what a dictator was up until this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's with this understanding that their term was limited to 6 months or the duration of the emergency, right? So once the crisis is over, you're done, right? And the office was a traditional part of the Roman Republic. But right now, these limitations were being circumvented. Sulla was one of the first ones to really circumvent this, right? He really took advantage of it. And Julius Caesar is about to push it to new levels. Like this idea of dictator in absentia, not a thing. How do you dictate if you're not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Sulla before him had been the first one to get rid of that time limit. So see how piece by piece you erode it, right?
Yep.
And like that's why it's dangerous to do this kind of crap. We're seeing it now.
It's very dangerous. Once you start, everyone has free reign over it.
It's just more. It's an avalanche.
Yep.
Because, and then eventually someone's going to see all the holes and pull that last brick, knowing what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as we're going to see, Julius Caesar is going to take this to a whole new level. As of right now, though, he is, because of the Civil War, because everything's a mess. The government's shut down. We have a dictator dictator in absentia, right? Until this crisis is over.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have to figure out, what does that mean? Over.
Yeah.
Right? So, not dictator as it's becoming that. But as of right now, dictator is not a bad thing. Okay? It's not a good thing. It's not saying you are not in good times if you have to have a dictator.
Yeah.
But the dictator is supposed to be a good thing because he's supposed to be the thing that gets you out of the bad times, right?
He's supposed to
So,
move unimpeded to be able
right.
to get to stability.
To fix what's going on.
Yes.
And you're just going to have to trust that he can do it. And they're going to do that with people who they trust. So, Mark Antony's 6-month tenure as Master of the Horse in 47 BCE would prove to be a political and administrative train wreck. He inherited a city in chaos. His soldiers' mentality was And his soldiers' mentality was ill-equipped to handle the deep economic and political divisions. These are not police. These are soldiers.
Yeah.
It's why we don't bring in military units to maintain order in our own countries.
Correct.
They're not trained for this.
No.
When people throw shit at them, they're not trained to keep it together.
They are trained to point and shoot.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't mean they always do. Doesn't mean that that's the pass for them to do those things. But that's why they're not the ones. They are not meant to be the long-term solution.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're using them that way, you're going to have problems. And maybe that's what you're hoping for. But the central issue at this point was this debt crisis, right? The Civil War had fundamentally crippled Rome's economy. The flow of commerce had at this point stopped, and the interest rates had spiked because, of course, they had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many citizens, including members of the Senate, and crucially thousands of Caesar's own veteran soldiers, were now drowning in debt. The soldiers are drowning in debt because they have to, a lot of times, equip themselves, guys. They're not given state-issued stuff at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You have to maintain your own crap. Also, usually a lot of these people had certain requirements of like land ownership and stuff to be in the army. So you have to maintain your home and everything too while all this is going on.
Yep.
Yeah. So the ambitious tribune, Publius Cornelius Dolabella, himself a Caesarian general, but a man of far less proven loyalty than Antony, seized the political moment. He proposed a Novae Tabulae, the radical populist policy of total debt cancellation. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This was an explosive proposal that threatened the wealth of the Optimate elite, many of whom were Caesar's cautious allies, while simultaneously appealing directly to the debt-ridden masses and veterans. You're going to be tempted to like this guy. Just keep an open mind here. No one is a hero in this story. Maybe we're
Understood.
saying these things to manipulate people with no intention of actually doing it. But we know it's going to disrupt. This guy's promising us this. What are you doing? And then get people mad.
Indeed.
Because he's a rich person. Why is he going to cripple himself? The
He's
rich are
not.
not going to drain the swamp. But anyway, Antony opposed Dolabella vehemently. His motives were complex and ultimately self-defeating, though. Politically, he feared this extreme measure would shatter Rome's economy, and it might have, and that Caesar, who favored stability and a partial gradual debt restructuring, would disapprove. So true. But driving his opposition was a consuming personal hatred. Antony had recently been humiliated by his divorce from Antonia Hybrida. Remember her?
Yep.
Almost everyone else forgot. And fiercely suspected that Dolabella, yep, that guy, had seduced her. Remember when we talked about that? Remember how that was like, oh, I left her because she's cheating on me with this guy?
This is the guy.
Apparently. The historian Plutarch and Cicero, both, which again, the Dead Sea of Salt, right?
Mhm.
Both attest to Antony's intense personal resentment towards Dolabella, which overshadowed his political judgment. I could believe this part, right? We've seen this happen before.
Indeed.
But driving his opposition was when Dolabella, determined to force the law, though, gathered his followers and seized control of the forum. Antony's response was disastrously heavy-handed. Instead of negotiating or even deploying the Senate-approved guard, Antony unleashed his own soldiers, the very troops he was supposed to command and protect, on the unarmed populace and Dolabella's followers. It's giving Napoleon using grape shot on the citizens in France.
Yep. Not a good look,
Napoleon
Antony.
was able. Nope. Napoleon was able to spin it, but that would still be kind of a stain on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Antony was not Napoleon, and so the resulting massacre, sure, it restored order, but it was also a horrifying display of arbitrary military power. Antony's troops slaughtered hundreds, including Roman citizens. He turned the forum, the sacred heart of Roman law, and like in the most literal sense, right? This is their church, folks.
Yep.
Law is sacred. It is the gods ordaining it and protecting it, upholding it. It's why we, take Vestal virgins and brick them in the walls if they sleep with anybody. Oh. So, and he took that space and turned it into a blood-soaked execution ground. I mean, come on, Antony, use the choking pit that your stepdad got choked in. That's the designated killing spot. Everyone knows this. But how are you going to get that blood out of the marble? God.
It'll never come out. You will literally just see blood stains aging inside of the marble because it is porous. There is no washing it out.
And you just killed all the janitors because they were protesting. Damn it. Who's even going to do it? God.
Damn it, Antony.
This action, we can agree this was brutal. It was disproportionate. It undermined the core propaganda of the Caesarian cause, that they were fighting to restore the rule of law. It's why Caesar didn't do this in the first place.
Yep.
It's not a good look.
No, it isn't.
Especially after you defeated Pompey and it seems like, okay, there's not really any resistance now. And now you're like, and now that everyone's gone, we're going to be jerks. Right.
Yeah.
The city descended into a period of mourning and anarchy. Cicero, who had hoped to, let's be real, this is what he claimed, to remain neutral, was horrified, writing that Antony's leadership was a disgrace and a pestilence. I feel funny that Cicero said, I was just trying to be neutral, but I just couldn't help but be upset. Okay.
No, such gaslighting. Such fucking gaslighting. Oh
God, Cicero, lay it on thick. Anyway. I mean, Cicero is neutral in the sense that he is looking out for Cicero. But, and I do think he was a Republican and all that and old guard, but he was an opportunist for sure, right? It's why he didn't flee with Pompey, because he was trying to see if he kind of just stays quote unquote neutral, then he can just ally himself with who comes out on top.
Exactly.
So, but at the end of the day, Cicero is not neutral. He is got his own motives. He's out for numero uno. And he is biased for sure. And he really doesn't like Antony. So Caesar's deputy had proven that he could command men in battle, but not temper his own passions in the seat of civil power.
The sheer political instability caused by the Dolabella crisis forced Caesar to return to Italy in October of 47 BCE, cutting short his affairs in the East. He was furious. Antony had compromised his regime's authority, stained its reputation with unnecessary blood, and risked economic collapse. Caesar, ever the pragmatist, immediately set about resolving the political damage. He pardoned Dolabella for his role in the riots, paying off his debts and treating him with honor. This was a clear public rebuke to Antony, who had expected praise for crushing the dissent. Caesar then sought to remove the ambitious Dolabella from the volatile tribune's office by appointing him to the consulship for the remaining part of the year. This was a critical step in stabilizing the regime. But Antony, though politically disgraced, still held one ancient constitutional weapon: his office as an augur. The augurs were a college of priests responsible for interpreting the auspices, the sacred omens taken from the flight of birds or the feeding habits of chickens. Their ruling determined if a public act like an election, a treaty, or an appointment of a magistrate was favorable to the gods.
Yeah,
When
so remember, like I said, when we hold Rome as the epitome of republic, and the Greeks, of democracy and republicanism, blah 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 blah. Remember, guys, you could be elected president, but if a chicken ate grain wrong, maybe not.
you see, like, okay, so I do divination on the regular, okay? I read tarot, I read runes. I do actually do this,
Mhm.
where I will see things in clouds, potentially birds. I have done this since I was little. It has just been the way that I understand the world. When you have a motive outside of just understanding, you will never be able to see clearly.
Right.
Antony has motive outside of just viewing.
And
When
let's
you mix,
remember,
when you
like,
mix,
remember with Antony's stepdad?
mm-hmm,
Remember when Cicero's wife had a crazy dream? And that
yep,
crazy dream meant that everyone had to die and forego due process. And it
yep,
just so happened to benefit Cicero and all those people.
uh-huh,
It was the god. And that's where, and like, I'm not skeptical of, like you said, if it's just for understanding and growth and things like that's fine. The moment you're using it
as a
to,
political tool, oh, fuck that, no.
right, or like to uphold law, to
Yeah, no,
determine guilt or
no.
not, that's where I'm sorry, that's dangerous.
It is
Um,
dangerous, and there's nothing to
and
be
we,
sorry for on that, realistically. As somebody
yeah,
who does this, I have been practicing this for a long fucking time. This shit is
and
dangerous.
yeah, and the thing for me more than anything, it was just to point out that remember, like when we talk about like the sacred sacrament, like how does a political figure be sacrament for just being an elected official? This is why, because it is tied to religion. This is a great example of that. That the College of
Yeah.
Augurs can kind of like veto things just because they're a religious order, and people take it super serious. You know,
This is
so it
this
is a
will
blended.
come back into prevalence with the Catholic Church once Rome turns really into that, because if Rome doesn't agree with it, it can't happen, right?
Right. And like, and even then, like with the emperors of Rome, right, when they're still
Mm-hmm.
pagan and stuff, like that's a whole issue with the Christians is they refuse to give offerings to the emperor, like
Mm-hmm.
sacrifices, religious to the gods, sacrifices to a political figure,
Yeah. You
right? Like
can't mix them.
politics and religion go hand in hand for most of human history.
Mm-hmm.
Secularism is a very modern concept that we are
It is.
still struggling with.
It is. And it is because religion and faith will teach you what the quote natural order is, whereas government will show you the practical order, and people want to conflate the two. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot. We cannot have that kind of conflation. That shit's fucking dangerous.
Right.
But when Caesar attempted to formally appoint Dolabella as consul, Antony stood up in the Senate and, using his religious authority, declared that the necessary auspices were unfavorable. He declared that he had seen a flash of lightning on the left, a bad omen. This was an unprecedented act of political defiance. Antony, Caesar's own deputy, used the traditional sacred law of the Republic to effectively veto the will of the dictator. Caesar, who always prided himself on respecting the ancient forms of the Republic, even as he hollowed out its essence, was forced to yield. He could not risk the political and religious outcry of ignoring the sacred law, especially from one of the most visible priests in the state. Dolabella's appointment was blocked.
This petty public act of defiance following the Forum massacre confirmed Caesar's growing belief that Antony was not a reliable civil partner. He was too volatile, too driven by personal malice, and too dangerous to be entrusted with supreme civil authority. The dictator, new daddy, conqueror of Gaul, was blocked by the religious protest of his own subordinate. I'd like to take a moment that this all proves that rather than just being the loyal dog to Caesar that he is often portrayed as, Antony had a mind of his own and was willing to stand up to him if need be. I mean, even the best kids defy dad from time to time. You know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the best kids give you some backsass once in a while, right?
God, yes, they do.
They're, you know, and rather than him just being a lackey to Caesar, no, he has his own interest. And if Caesar's in his way, damn right he'll say something. Yes, most of the time, they both align, but when they don't, it's messy, girls. It's messy.
Very.
Furthermore, Antony seemed to have Dolabella clocked for what he was, a snake. But that will come later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because yes, he is being petty. Yes, he hates Dolabella. But we're going to find out maybe understandably, right? He's not approaching it correctly. But yeah. And maybe this is also a hint at Caesar's arrogance that he's not listening to Antony. And Antony's pissed. Like, bro.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, Caesar might have him clocked, but knows how to play the game better. And he's like telling Antony, bro, you learn to play the game.
Yeah.
And now he is playing the game. He's like, oh, you bitch. That's not what I meant. So,
I mean him with his his kinky boots. But yes.
So he's like, how dare you wear the same thigh highs as me? No, for real. Like Anthony's not wearing thigh highs.
No, he's not.
No, I think the augurs had like fun hats. So with that all being said, in the present, the fallout was going to be immediate and total for Antony. He was stripped of all official positions. Caesar is big mad. Caesar chose a different path to stability. Good old Marcus Lepidus, a quiet, reliable, and politically boring general. Lepidus is going to be the third wheel later on. Poor old Lepidus.
Poor Lepidus.
Oh. But he gives me golden retriever energy. I don't know. He's a good boy. I don't know. I don't know enough about him because he's so forgettable, but like, he's like, hi, I'm here too, guys. Like, here he is. He's like that one everyone forgets about. But it's like, he was a general. He was there too. He was there for all of this crap. And like, even ran crap from time to time and seemed to do a decent job, but everyone forgot about him. I don't know. Well, it's like, what's the modern political equivalent to that? That doesn't make people mad. I feel
Oh
like there are
God.
some where it's like, God, you were all right. In a different time, you would have been probably good, but
Yeah.
forgettable. Anyway, um, this is the guy that is chosen to replace Antony, both as consular colleague and master of the horse. So Lepidus lacks Antony's charisma and volatility, but he's not as volatile, right?
Mhm.
And therefore a guaranteed pair of safe hands, a safe pair of hands. He's not going to cause trouble. He's not going to inspire people in the same way that Antony is, but that's not in this moment, not a bad thing, right?
Correct, because you need calm, you need boring after
Mhm.
such a cyclone of a civil war. It fucked up
Also,
everything.
Caesar's home now. He can be the
Mm-hmm.
charismatic one. You don't want someone competing with you for that, right?
True. Very true.
So, um, so I would say Lepidus is more lackey. He's the lackey here, if anybody is, but
Agreed.
bless his heart. But when Caesar campaigned to crush the final resistance in Africa and Spain, Antony was forced to remain in Rome. So he's not even allowed to campaign with him. You
Damn.
can't run the government. You can't be an augur. You can't even join me in my army. Damn.
Damn.
You are a mere private citizen. The hero of Pharsalus was a disgraced, humiliated outsider left to observe the political spectacle from his private estates. Which, I mean, cry me a river. He's crying into his silk sheets. I mean, he's still rich.
True.
But I mean, it is for him not looking good, right?
Yeah,
You're essentially at this point in the doghouse, and there's no way out.
very much so.
This forced 2-year isolation was a period of intense resentment. But would it be possible that it was also, paradoxically, Antony's political saving grace? Tune in next time to find out.
If you like what you heard today, please give us a positive review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. It goes a long way for us to appease the algorithm gods and get this suggested to others just like you. The more that we can connect to our fellow history nerds, the more that we can build up a community and keep this show going.
Also, we have a Patreon where you can hang out with us and get exclusive content, like videos where we might try and make ancient recipes, talk about topics that couldn't fit into the main arcs of the podcast, and just generally being batshit and dumpster fires, all for the price of a latte per month. Research materials and books cost a lot of money, guys, and it takes a lot of time to create this show. So anything that you provide would be a huge help.
We can't wait to see you again next week, and as always, thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye for now.